All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on this lovely morning. Today we have the esteemed pleasure of having Jordan Player from our technical account management team joining me here today. We're super excited to have Jordan. We'll have him give kind of an introduction to who he is, what makes Jordan Jordan. And then we'll jump into some questions, learn more about him, his journey, what's got him here, and what makes him tick. So Jordan, welcome.
Thank you, Jake. It's awesome to be here. It's awesome to be a part of this and to show everyone what we're all about.
Sweet. So tell us about you. Who is Jordan Player?
Well, I am Jordan Player, and awesome last name, by the way.
Yes,
Everyone
the
says
best.
so, and I couldn't agree more.
Yes. Player. It's the best.
Yeah, I'm technical account manager here. I have bringing with me nearly 14 years of MSP experience, 2 with Nexus IT. And I got to tell you, man, it's great being here at Nexus. It's great being here as part of the technical account manager team. And what we do on that team, what I do specifically, is identifying gaps in client infrastructure, cybersecurity, policy, and everything I do is working towards identifying and filling those gaps with the clients, analyzing reports, working with leadership, collaborating with our internal teams here in service of those goals. And I like to toot my own horn. I'm really good at it.
Toot toot. Yes. I love that. One thing that I talked to Ben about, who's another one of our, so we call them TAMs, our technical account managers, is you said, 14 years at an MSP, and we use the term MSP life a lot. What do you consider MSP life?
MSP life is just fast-paced, always learning IT work. I feel like it's ever evolving, ever changing. It seems like every single problem is its own new, unique flower that we have to overcome. And we have to be agile. We have to be smart to overcome all these challenges. And we do this every single day.
That's awesome. Which, so I think that's an interesting thing to talk about because there are plenty of IT roles. I mean, the IT landscape is huge. I always joke that we're like doctors, people will ask us about like database or website or programming, and it's like, yeah, well, that's not what we do. That doesn't mean we don't know what we're doing. It's like you don't want a brain surgeon working on your heart if you're having heart surgery. Not that they're not smart.
Right.
It's just different roles. But one of the things that is interesting about being in an MSP is just what Jordan said. It's extremely fast-paced because you're not understanding and knowing one client environment. You could be working, 10 different clients in a day. And one of the things that does make the job difficult but tons of fun is that it's always changing and growing, that we're learning new things, we're adapting. And what's kind of fun but difficult, I would say, is we're doing that for our customers and for ourselves because, we're always trying to, what's the next best tool that's going to help us? How do we refine our tool sets and how do we do a better job? So what are some of the things that you do to cope with kind of this fast-paced environment and use it as a positive instead of like an anchor to drag you down?
Well, that's an interesting question. I don't think that it's ever really dragged me down just because I've been doing this exact thing for my entire career. There may be some days. It can be very difficult for some people to cope with that rapid switching of different technologies, different environments. And I have to imagine in non-MSP role, transitions like that might happen maybe on the day, or I work with something for an entire week, then the next week I work on something different. But here it's like by the hour, sometimes by the minute. Mm-hmm. We're constantly switching. We're, working on this completely separate environment, switch into a different separate environment with different technologies, different servers, different applications. And it can be daunting. It can be mentally taxing. I think very simply, I just force myself to take breaks. Just decompress. It usually doesn't take me more than 5 or 10 minutes to do that once I kind of feel that overwhelm pressure coming in, but just unplug from it all, 5-10 minutes, hop on my phone, read an article, whatever, come back, slam it.
I love that. That is awesome and great advice. One thing I think that is something that we don't talk a lot about in MSP life that makes it nice is we have each other. So I've worked in companies where I was on the help desk team, and it was when we had challenges, there's only a few of us. I was lucky to have a few of us, but some people it's just themselves. And a lot of times your partners in the business or maybe the CFO or someone else who's not technical. And that can be hard where it's like you're trying to explain this is a huge technical problem and here's why I need help. And if they don't understand it, it can be tough. But here at Nexus, the vast majority of us are technical. 90% of the company is technical people. And so when it comes to, we do a lot of commiserating, like, oh, that's rough. I've been there. But also, more importantly than that, we do a lot of working together and building each other and helping each other solve things. So how has that been successful for you in your career, working with other IT professionals to accomplish your goals?
Out of control, helpful and useful. I will say the earlier days of my career, probably the first 10 years, were much like you described. It was kind of just me having to solve all the problems myself with very little. Like, I worked on a very small team, very small, not a lot of, technicians out there to have your back and to lean on. Here at Nexus, it's crazy. Every single problem, it seems like there is someone that has some experience that can lend their expertise. Despite how broad our skill sets are, there is still so much to specialize in that it's nice to have those people to go to for advice on certain problems or to even hand off certain issues and to have certain things escalated to me and passed off to me because I have my own skill set and specialties. So it's been awesome. I mean, working on a team this large with so many talented technicians is just night and day difference.
I love that. One thing that I think is interesting, we merged our companies together a few years ago. So my company, Intellitek's and Nexus IT, two Goliaths in the market, that's what I like to say it, joined together and we created this super team. And one of my biggest concerns was how do you get engineers to work with each other? Because, there is ego measuring that happens, at first where it's like who's smartest, those sort of things. But I have noticed, and I want to get your thoughts on it, that overall, that's not the case here at Nexus. That people in general are excited to work with each other. There's not that competition. It's more of a collaboration.
And that's a great point. I essentially joined the team right after that merge started, I guess. And if anyone hadn't have told me that that's what it was, I wouldn't have even noticed. It was just everyone was working together. Everyone was collaborating. It was so weird, honestly, to come into such a bigger team where everyone's friendly, everyone's working together, everyone's collaborating, everyone's willing to offer me advice, everyone's willing to take my advice. And I had just never experienced that before. And I honestly don't know if that's the normal in this industry at all.
Yeah. No, I don't know that either. I just know that's what we have been building and we're continuing to try to build. So tell me about, so you are a natural leader. You have a lot of skill sets there. You work very well with others. And leadership to me is different than holding like a managerial position because you can be a manager and not a leader. And I look at them as different but complementary to each other. And so what are some of the things that you have learned in your leadership journey and your journey in IT?
Well, the first thing I would say is that I didn't really know that I was a leader or even a good one. It just seemed I was just carrying out my job, carrying out my responsibilities. And then one day someone was like, wow, good job leading that project or good job leading that task. You have some good skills. And it was just kind of like a weird click of like, oh, is that what I've been doing? Is that what that is? So I don't know that I have any good feedback for you there other than I just do my job. I do it the best I can, and I do it collaboratively, and I do it in such a way where I take ownership of my tasks and see them through to completion, even if it's not me specifically doing some of the work. I do make sure they all get done.
I love that. So that's what leadership is. I think one thing that we try to foster here is for people to be leaders in their roles. And I mean, what's cool, what the technical account managers do, you're like the IT leader for your customers.
Exactly.
So you are leading their company, which that is pretty cool to be a part of and to kind of have that ownership. And I mean, it can be daunting too because,
Sure.
you know,
It's never not daunting, only dealing with, the absolute highest level people in a company, being the fractional IT manager, the VCSOs, it can be, but honestly, it's also empowering to know that they're putting their trust in me and our company to steer them in the right direction, to give them the good advice, to manage everything. And as far as I know, we're doing a great job.
I think we are. So you talked about trust. I like that. So why do you think trust is so important in the role you're in and just in IT? Why do you think trust is so critical in being successful?
Well, trust enables the client business, to really focus their energy on their business. I believe there's a term thrown around. I'm trying to remember. It's working on your business, in your business,
Yeah.
if that's right. And if we can enable them to trust us with their IT work where they don't need to supervise it or have all these worries about it, that happens. When people are underperforming, you get too involved to make sure that they're up to standard. We just provide that absolute level of trust so that they don't need to worry about it. We provide updates, we provide advice, we provide solutions, and then they can get back to, spending their limited mental energy. We all have limited mental energy
Oh yeah.
on the things that are most important to them.
Yes. I love that. So obviously we're human beings and we aren't perfect. We mess up. Whether it's, the TAM team, sales team, our projects team, frontline services escalations, we're going to have hiccups in our support and we're going to cause frustrations with the customers, which we're kind of like pulling a deposit out of that trust bank that we've been developing. What are some of the tools you use or tactics you use to restore that when that happens? Because that's an inevitable. If people think mistakes will never happen or issues won't come up, even if they have nothing to do with us, like that's the nature of one life. Everything kind of breaks down and needs to be massaged and get better. But so I'm just putting that out there that one thing we can guarantee with IT is it'll go down. That's why you work with professionals. I mean, our goal is uptime, but there will be some downtime and it's our job to limit that. But how do you work with the customers when something like that happens? What are some of the things you've seen successful or not successful?
The most successful I've ever seen is when there's a problem, a mistake, or down, outage, whatever, go right at it. I don't dance around issues. I'm a straight shooter. I bring it to them how it is, especially if any part of that had to do with my actions specifically.
Yeah.
I'll say, this is what happened. This is what I did. This is possibly how it was caused. This is what I did, or this is what we did. Here's our plan to fix it. Here's what we need from you. Here's what you need from us. And just run with it.
I love that. I love that. I think in the end, what so much of this stuff boils down to is proper communication and having that willingness to be accountable. I think sometimes we shy away from accountability because we're worried. When I think in general, people think of accountability as I'm supposed to be in trouble. If I'm accountable, I can be in trouble. And to me, it's it's a double-sided stick. Sure, there's that piece in there, but just what you said, you address it head on. You let them know what's been going on, what are the issues, and then what are we going to do to fix it. And most times when that happens, the customer or with the situation is just like, great.
It's important to note that every action has consequences. A lot of those consequences are negative. A lot of them are positive. The important part is to not be afraid of those consequences because they're out there. They're going to come at us. It's just our job to deal with it and move to the next step.
Yeah, absolutely. So segue into kind of a different type of questioning. What makes you tick? What makes you more in your personal life or what makes you successful in your business life? Who is Jordan behind the shield of Nexus on your chest?
Well, I'm just a career man. IT is everything. No, I'm just kidding. No. I was that level of, work comes first, work all day, every day for a while. And I'm glad that I'm able to kind of reset and come back into a personal life outside of work. And a large part of that is what we were mentioning before with having a good team that has your back. For a while, I was the only one responsible for things. So if things had to be done all day, every day, that was me doing it. Now I'm able to rely on support from my teammates, from all the teams at Nexus to get things done, have a little bit more personal time, and I'm perfectly willing and happy to provide that support to my team when it comes around to it. And it's great. As far as what I do, man, big gamer, lots of video games. Those fill a lot of my evenings and early mornings. But what I've really come into the past year or two is board games, tabletop board games. I'm addicted. Okay. I have anywhere from 3 to 5 separate groups of board games, that we play regularly at a time. Right now I have 5.
Holy cow.
Like 5, 3 of those are monthly. One of those is every 6 weeks or so, and the other one's every 2 months. It's awesome. They're fun. They're engaging. I love that there's just all sorts of complexity levels. So only one of those groups are diehard super strategy gamers like me. All the rest are, groups of families, my family, my fiance's family, other friends that just aren't, into super long strategy games. It takes a special type of person who wants to sit and play one board game for 6 to 12 hours. Yeah. So most people a little more comfortable in the 1 hour range, lighter games, and there's just thousands of games out there to play. And I'm excited to try every single one of them.
That is awesome. So with that, I think that's interesting because it feels like in the, kind of the digital world we live in where, we're moving more and more to digital play. What about board games draws you in?
That's a great question. I'm not sure that I've ever really thought about it. And it's possibly just availability. Most of these games are developed for the tabletop realm. Only a small percentage of board games ever even transition into a digital format.
Yeah.
And even then, it's way less personal to play with someone online like that. I just like interacting with people. I like bringing them into my house, laying out a cool board game, playing off people's expressions and reactions, and all of that just gets thrown out the window online.
I agree. I love that. I think tying it back to what your role is at Nexus, I think a lot of times we as technicians can kind of get stuck in the, I'm trying to solve the problem and technology is the problem. And I'm going to use technology to solve this. And when a lot of the time it's kind of what you said, like with tabletop board games, when you're working with people, you can understand more what's going on and understand the overall frustration with the customer. Because a lot of times you're not just solving an IT problem. You need to work with them on, oh, shoot, this has been a persistent problem. Their computer's been a problem for a long time, and they can't get their work done. And they're being, quote unquote, they're being judged for not getting their work done. So what can I do to assist them? It kind of goes beyond, and that's where I've seen you be so successful, is that you're looking beyond the screen, beyond the keyboard, and looking at the person and what can we do to help them and what in their job can I give them freedom to be able to do. When you work with people like that, how do you feel after you solve something?
I feel great. I mean, there's no browbeating around. It's great to know that you solved the problem, to know that a lot of times you take someone who's having the worst day. I mean, we say that all the time. We talk to people on their worst days. Yes, their computer doesn't work. They can't get their work done. They're mad at somebody. Someone could be mad at them. And to take all that energy and focus into somewhere positive and eventually get them to, oh, now we can get my work done and I'm happy about it. And this person's happy now. It feels great. I like making people happy. I like talking to people that are happy.
Yes. I think that it's important to understand with IT that you need to at least for what we do, support services and helping people, that has to be part of your DNA, that you want to make sure people are happy, that they're feeling good, and that you're actually solving those problems. Obviously, we want to solve the IT stuff. That's what we specialized in, but that high of helping people. So on the converse side, tell me about some pivotal experience in your career that was difficult, that you have gleaned wisdom from to be better or assist with these sort of things.
That's a great question. The only thing that really comes to mind, because I don't really look at my career experiences as pivotal moments. Usually it's the sum of my experience. I'm a very gradual guy, very gradual learner. But there was one experience quite a few years ago where it was one of the earlier times that I was dealing with like larger companies, CEO, CFO, COO, all at the same time, working on a big problem. And I was young, nervous as heck, and just kind of had to deal with it. And it was the first real time that I realized that, okay, going after the problem directly, explaining what was, what the issue was, what we were doing about it, what we needed from them, the process I was going through before, and to have all these people that were, by the way, usually very irate when it came to IT problems about their company,
Oh yeah.
to just look at me and be like, okay, that's good. Keep us updated. And it was just like a weight off my shoulders. I was like, wow, this stuff actually works. Actually talking to people, just letting them know what's going on. And I just applied that to the rest of my career.
That's
great.
been successful.
Yeah. It turns out people like just being informed about what's going on.
Yep.
And it harkens really well. I was going to make a comment about, we get really wrapped up into solving the IT problems, but we're really trying to solve the problems of the person. It just happens to be the IT problem a lot of the time, but we're here to make the people happy and ourselves happy. Working with the IT is just the medium that we get there.
Correct. I love that. I love that. IT is the medium. We're there to help people. I think that is awesome. What advice would you give to either an aspiring IT person or an aspiring leader? What sort of advice would you give them? So, if you could talk to yourself 10 years ago, 15 years ago, what advice would you give?
What comes to mind is just to keep really caring, taking pride in your work, keep learning, keep trying to solve that problem. It can feel really like you want to give up a lot, like this problem's just too hard. It's too hard for me to solve. It's got to be someone else's problem. But a lot of the times it just takes that little bit of extra research, that little bit of extra testing to get to a solution. And it's something that it seems like a lot of people in the field are losing sight of. They're too quick to get to that point where they want to give up. And every time you hit that point and concede to it, the next time it comes a little quicker, a little quicker, a little quicker. And it's our job to just push through it. It's not hard. We just need to have that vigilance to get there, to get to the resolution. And the more we get to it, the more it'll become our first and second nature to keep wanting to solve the problem.
I love that. I 100% agree. And I've seen that many times in my life where, you're banging your head against that wall and you want to give up. Those are those moments to me when you do push through that wall. And I think what's cool about it is it's not only do you solve it for the customer, but sometimes I don't think we measure well enough on how well we've grown and done. It gets easy to kind of look back and say, oh yeah, but that's to be expected. And I think it's important for us to have our ideals. What is our focus? Where do we want to be? Kind of that horizon line that we're always going to. But the horizon line is always there. You're never going to get to the horizon. So one of the steps we have to do is kind of pause, look back, measure our progress, and feel good about it. Because if we do that, we'll be more successful. But if we're always beating ourselves up like, oh, but if I would have been 15 steps ahead, I would be better. It's like, but look how far you've come. I mean, like that. You solved, quote unquote, an impossible problem where you didn't know what the answer would be. You pushed through it and figured it out. I mean,
Exactly. And hey, we all bang our heads against stuff. I'm kind of a side banger, so I had a lot of bruises on the right side, but I think it's just part of the process sometimes.
yes, I agree. So I love like podcasts and books, that sort of stuff. Are there any books, podcasts, or anything like that that you love that you would recommend for others?
I actually do. It's a book. I'm an audiobook guy, but this one is perfectly fine to consume, reading it. And it's a book. I'm of the opinion every person should read at least once, and I read it at least twice every single year.
Oh, wow.
And it doesn't even have to do directly with technology or even professional development or anything. And that's why some people find it weird. It's a book about psychology and persuasion. So some people kind of hearken it to kind of like a salesy book, and it's not that at all. It's about using persuasion to help people and guarding yourself from predatory persuasion against you. Most often in predatory salesmen, but there's a part in that book that stands out to me where in an emergency situation, I think the book describes it as someone's in a car accident, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Two single drivers are in a car accident. It's a bad one. People are obviously injured, but we see time and time again in situations like that where if other people on the road can get around it, they'll slowly just start driving around and leaving the people there. However, if you give someone personal responsibility or even force it upon them, like if you're in the accident and you are coherent enough to be like, I need you to call an ambulance. Like almost 10 times out of 10, they'll do it. They'll stop, they'll pull over, they'll call the ambulance, they'll start helping you. And that kind of thing is contagious. It's like you call 911, you help the other driver. And once you get people involved, it now becomes kind of socially acceptable for you to jump in and get involved. And to me, that's a really, really good thing to have. And I think more and more people should have that mentality as their default so that we don't need to trigger it individually as a society. We'll just be there already. So the book, it's called Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion by Dr. Robert B. Cialdini.
Cool.
And we can provide that in a text form because his name is spelled interestingly. But wonderful book, wonderful audiobook. Like I said, I read that thing twice a year at minimum. It's not very long, but it is amazing.
I just used credit and got it. So I'll be listening to this. Thank
Jake's the real deal. He actually takes advice and reads books. It's really awesome.
I am like addicted to this stuff. I've like just what you were describing made me excited to learn more. And what's interesting, we talked about leadership before, even in that situation, kind of taking the bull by the horns and asking people to help. When I think of a leader, like I said before, it's not necessarily the manager who has a hat on. A lot of times the people who are managers are very good leaders. I'm not saying that they're not also the same thing, but many times I think there's like people like you who are leading people and leading companies and leading initiatives and those sort of things, and they can have the same fulfillment and have that same sort of following and have people trust you. And sometimes people don't even recognize it's like, I don't know, there's something about Jordan, but if he asks me to do something, I'm all in because I know he's got my back.
And I don't even recognize it a lot of the time, which is fine with me.
Yeah. So before we end, I have one more question I'll ask you, but before this one. So one of the things that always fascinates me is, so one of my degrees is in entrepreneurship, which is kind of weird that there's a degree for it because, if you think about, when people think of about entrepreneurship, they just think of starting businesses. And one thing I've thought a lot about is, can you be an entrepreneur inside your role in a company?
That's a great question. I've never even thought about it.
So in my experience, what you have described, even in that story, it's like entrepreneurship is, you're getting the right resources, the right people to accomplish whatever you need to do. Most of the time we're thinking, is it to make money or to, if it's a charity, to get people the needed help. But that is what entrepreneurship to me is. It's that spirit of how do I get these limited resources and build something out of that, whatever that may be. And so I think more people are entrepreneurs than they even give themselves credit for, because they only think of it in the terms of, did you start a company? There's plenty of people who start companies who are entrepreneurs.
That's a really good point. I've never classified my dealings like that, but it's a really good point. I mean, I frequently joke that my primary responsibility is to identify gaps and make sure they're filled. And I do that without anyone telling me to.
Yep.
So I guess that makes me, at least in part, an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I think it's pretty awesome. So one of my professors taught, plus I love the movie, October Sky.
Oh, I love that movie.
And he is like, this is the perfect example of entrepreneurship. And when he said that, I'm like, I've seen this movie. How does that even make sense? But if you look at the story, Homer Hickam wants to build a rocket. They have limited resources. So he builds the team. He's using outside resources, people in the town, those sort of things. They iterate until finally, he builds and he wins, the state fair or whatever. And he was able to meet Von Braun.
Yeah.
He met him at the end. He didn't even know. But like when you think of this story in that aspect, it's like, man, there's a lot of things in my life that were very entrepreneurial, and even not just, starting things. It's winning in this certain aspect. It could be anything. And so I don't know. I kind of want to shout you out that I see that a lot of that in you. It is cool to see that and see you build that way and see you use people to benefit them, lead them, and then accomplish hard things. And that is like entrepreneurship 101 to me.
And you're blowing my mind about the October Sky thing.
Yeah.
I'm going to watch that movie with a whole new lens.
Yeah.
Wow. Anyway.
When I watched that, I was in my undergrad and was like, man, one, I love movies. So watching movies at school is cool. But then, just changing the way I looked at it was like, man. And how many things are out there like that you can glean from. So last question, can you share either a fun or surprising fact about yourself for our audience here?
Well, I can, Jake. And this may not come as a surprise to everyone based on, my demeanor, my physique. But back in high school, I was actually a competitive cheerleader.
Seriously. Awesome.
It was only for my senior year. It was for an all-star team, so we weren't attached to a school or anything. But it was one of the best years of my life. Very difficult. Shotgun my system into a very, physically active where I wasn't up to that point. Lots of training, lots of endurance training, strength training, practicing. And I'm trying to think, our squad was like 35 people. And during that year and for the few years after, those 35 people were my absolute best friends, hanging out with them all the time. But yeah, we went to competitions around the state and even went all the way to Florida for the national competition where we took first place.
Seriously. Congratulations. I did not know that about you. That's awesome.
I know. It's not something that gets brought up a lot, not because I don't like talking about it. It's just not a lot of conversations get steered in that direction.
Yeah. You're not like, you're resolving this issue with your computer. And by the way, I'm a competition.
Yeah, you look like you can do a backflip. Do you have any history of that?
Let's just get into some backflip discussions because I'm good. That is awesome. Thanks for sharing. That's very interesting. What is that movie that they go to with jazz fingers? Have you seen that?
Oh, that's, what is that? Bring It On.
Bring It On. Whether you like those type of movies or not, I thought that was hilarious.
It was a good movie. No, really funny. And a little bit insightful. Where our team wasn't quite as drama-filled to fill a movie, but there are some stuff that goes down with a big group of people like that are physically active, all in high school, and just, it happens.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks for being on today. It's been awesome to get to know you better and to have you share who you are and how you make us win here at Nexus. And the way I always like to end is stay classy, Salt Lake City.